I want to go after an educated buyer.
If you don't know what you're looking for, you'll probably find something else. As a seller, we have to identify what's the mindset of the buyer ideal client profile that we're after.
You want to leverage folks in the right way. Make sure you leverage their strengths and skills. Don't ask them to do something that they shouldn't be doing.
Welcome to Building Your Sales Engine. I'm your host, Mark McGraw. Hi, friends. Welcome back to Building Your Sales Engine. I'm your host, Mark McGraw. In today's episode, I have with me today Mr. Harris Fogel. And Harris is the founder of TechCPG, which is a company that he started that helps organizations that want to do business in the United States and with CPG companies, which is consumer packaged goods companies. And in this episode, Harris walks through how do you open up new markets? And he spends time thinking and talking about, specifically in terms of an international company wanting to do business in the United States. But I tell you what, the framework that he lays out, the 5 steps that he has as a framework of thinking, how do you launch into a new market, can be applied in any circumstance whatsoever. And there's really a lot of very tangible tactical takeaways for how to think about identifying and building out a new market segment, however it might lay out to be. So I think you get a lot out of this episode. If you would like the notes, please go visit buildingyoursalesengine.com/giveaway, and we will be happy to provide to you an outline of today's podcast and today's episode. Let's dive into the conversation with Harris. All right, welcome to Building Your Sales Engine. I'm host Mark McGraw. I am here with my good friend and longtime friend, Harris Fogel. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Mark, it's an honor to be here. Been a longtime fan of yours and a longtime client of yours, having helped build a successful business on the back of working with you and Sandler. So really look forward to the conversation today.
I appreciate it. We started working together maybe 15 years ago, 14 years ago?
I think it's maybe a little longer, but 15 or 16, somewhere in that time frame for sure.
And I've gotten to watch your career and what you've been doing over the last decade and a half. It's amazing. Why don't you fill us all in on what you do, what you specialize in? And today, I know we're going to talk about launching businesses in the United States and kind of bringing businesses in, especially on the software side of things, and launching new markets. So fill us in a little bit about Harris Fogel and your specialty, sir.
Yeah, I appreciate that. First of all, it's great to be here. So who am I? Why am I here? Why does it even matter? So a little background. I have been in the technology space for over 30 years. But I actually started off selling coffee for Procter & Gamble, which if you think about industries, I love the consumer packaged goods industry and the consumer products industry. And I've spent the majority of my career in enterprise software serving that industry. So if you did a Venn diagram, on one side you had CPG or consumer products. On the other side, you've got CPG or enterprise software. And where they meet is kind of my specialty, consumer products and enterprise software. Along the way, I have had the opportunity to launch, 3 software companies, but the specialty has been bringing either a European or an Asian software company over to the United States and launching them and growing them and ultimately exiting. And so I've learned how to really, help a company get established and what are the best practices, to employ or to follow as you're getting off to the ground. And I've made a bunch of mistakes along the way too, but I've also had the opportunity, post launching the software companies to join SAP. And for the last decade, I led SAP's global consumer products business unit, which means I led the strategy and go to market for SAP globally within CPG or consumer products. And so now I'm helping, leaving SAP last year, I've been helping other software companies launch back into North America. So it's been a lot of fun.
And you do an amazing job of it. And your specialty really, I think, is one of the things we want to spend time on as a specialty is launching into the United States and bringing product into the U.S.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what I'm hoping we'll have a good discussion about today is, what are the key steps people or companies should take as they
Well,
look to?
let's start there.
Yeah, for sure.
If you thought about somebody that is coming into the United States, and by the way, I would imagine that a lot of the things that we'll talk about would also apply to somebody who is domestic and also working on a new market as
Oh,
well.
for sure. Absolutely.
But let's take and unpack that. How does somebody start? I mean, where does it begin? What are the first steps that someone needs to think about as they launch into a new market or coming into the United States?
Yeah, I think it's is a couple of things. One, it depends on how many resources you have to deploy or employ at the beginning. But let's just say there's limited resources, and let's say it's maybe a company's been successful in Europe or Australia or India, that, has a good product, and has some customers, but wants to take advantage of the opportunity. It's a massive opportunity in North America, right? Or even in Latin America. And so what do you do first? Well, again, it depends on the resources, but I think the first thing, companies really need to understand is who's their ideal client profile?
Yeah.
Like, what's their product do? Who should they sell it to? And really just map out that ideal client profile. And that's what I really work with our customers a lot on. And the second thing is you got that ideal client profile, and then you say, okay, well, based on that profile, who are the target customers we should go after, right? And then create that list of target customers. Third thing is, okay, within those customers, who should I call on?
Okay.
Who are the personas? Like what roles, what executives, should we call on? And then I guess maybe the fourth thing is what's our demand generation or go-to-market strategy to reach those personas. So I think that's a fourth step: ideal client profile, target list, what the demand gen strategy is, to go after.
And so let's start at the top and let's just think through then what are some of the best practices around identifying an ideal client profile? What should someone think about as they break that down? And whether they're entering into the U.S., by the way, or again, I'm thinking to myself, an ideal client profile is a cool thing for anybody to have.
Yeah, right.
So what are some of the key ingredients that you see as an ideal client profile?
Well, I mentioned early on that, I started my career in CPG, but I've spent the majority of my career in enterprise software. And I kind of look at consumer products and enterprise software together with a Venn diagram where I focus. So I'm going to use that as an example.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I looked at an ideal client profile and the way I've employed it for my customers, and for me personally, as I'm working at it, is like, well, this is a product. It's what industry is it good for? In my case, it's consumer products. And so, well, there's a list of a top 100 global consumer products companies, and of that, which ones are in the United States, right? And so, what I would say is, what industry do I want to go after? Okay, what is the profile of that customer? In other words, not all, if I'm selling a CRM or Salesforce automation system, do they have their own Salesforce? That could use the system. So in this case, consumer products, do they have the right sales organization? Do I have a size customer that I want to go after? Maybe all I care about is the enterprise, large Fortune 500 type companies. Well, that's another criteria that goes into that. So industry, size, go-to-market model, with their sales organization models. So you start looking at the criteria like that and then rank the customers on that scale. So those are just some examples. You can apply that to small businesses as well.
Mm-hmm.
If you're selling staircases for residential home building, do you have a high-end staircase? Right? So you want to go after high-end home builders and high-end architects. So that's kind of some of the key things you want to do to start mapping out who the ideal client profile is.
There's an expression, if you don't know what you're looking for, you'll probably find something else.
Yeah, that's probably true. And I've probably done that in my career too.
We all have.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
So I can see that then. And so once you start to identify those elements, and by the way, one of them that strikes me too is the psychology or the mindset of the customer too. I think that's something that we look at when we look at an ideal client profile, because not everybody has the right psychographics that you want to approach and come into as well. Are there any key psychographics if you're familiar with that or think about that, like a mindset that a buyer would have as they go into it?
Yeah, so it's interesting you say that, and I'm going to go a couple of tangents or a couple of ways on this particular question. One is for most of the companies I've worked with, I've always said that there's that an educated buyer is our best customer, right? Now I
Mhm.
didn't come up with that. There's an old retailer,
It was an
Sims.
ad or
It was
something. It was a
Sims. It was
mattress
like
ad
it
or
was
something.
Sims, like men's clothing. It was like it was all, and it was like probably out of New York, but we're here in Georgia. But I remember that ad. It just it sticks in my brain. But I think it's true, and I've always said it in the software too. If you think about psychographics, and I think we're going after it, I want to go after an educated buyer.
Yeah.
Because an educated buyer, if I've got a better product, or if I got a product that's in today's world, it's got AI and machine learning, and it's advanced. I want somebody that understands that and
Yeah.
understands the differences associated with it. So I think that's a really important thing, because a discerning buyer, an educated buyer, can weed through the hype versus reality and really kind of dig into that. The other thing is something that I kind of learned working with you years ago, and it stuck with me. Is is there a budget? Is there pain?
Mhm.
From a company perspective, are they in a position where they're going to want to buy?
Yeah.
Right? Is there enough business benefit that more than justifies the expenditure they're about to make, that's going to really help them grow? So I think that's an important element too.
So you've got that part of the psychographics in there. They've got to have pain. That's got to be criteria for the ideal client. They have to be experiencing, one of these 5 issues.
Yep.
And so if somebody's entering into a new market, they would want to identify what are the most common pains that they're going to fix. What's the mindset? And I'll give you, I'll just throw this out. I think that sometimes as a seller, you have to look for people that are visionary, as an example,
Right.
that are forward thinking or that embrace technology. Because you could have 2 businesses in your space. I would imagine that one business is absolutely against technology. They want everything to stay the same. They want consistency. The other one is that they're always looking for an edge, or they're looking for leveraging technology. And as a seller, we have to identify what's the mindset of the buyer ideal client profile that we're after. And I think that helps us, because not everybody's all the same just because they have the same size of company and distribution channel. There's some other elements in there.
Right. Yeah. It sparked a thought, as you were kind of going through that. And it's a mutual friend of ours, who I'd say is probably the best at developing champions in a
Mm.
company. He's probably listening to this and knows it's him. But,
Is his first name Scott?
it would be.
Okay. Well, all right. Now that cat's out of the bag.
It's out of the bag. But, I mean, I think it's a really important thing is to find that person that is forward looking
Yeah.
and developing them as a champion and helping them achieve their goals.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, I think that's a key element in this whole process, because if you can help somebody achieve their goal, and then they're going to help champion you, that will make all the difference in the world. That way you actually understand, the dynamics within that particular company you're dealing with, and how you can help them by working with that person who wants to be leading edge, bring advanced technology and big time results to their company.
And what you just imply in there too is that they're open to working with outside people.
Yeah.
That'd be another potential criteria for an ideal client profile.
100%. 100%.
So after we take that and we look at, okay, what's the ideal client profile? We've identified those ingredients to it. The next is that you identify you called it the target market segmentation, or is this really where you'd identify the names of businesses that are in those space?
Correct. Yeah, it's 100%. It's like at that point in time, based on that criteria, which companies meet that criteria, and then start mapping those. Right. And so, you may start with 1,000 potential prospects, but based on the ideal client profile, you're going to winnow it or whittle it down to a manageable number that you want to go after. Now, every business is different, right? I've tended to be more, on the enterprise side of software, so dealing with the larger companies, but every business is different. But once you get that profile, you can start figuring out, who the list of customers are. I'm going to go on to the next one, like who are the right personas to go after within that company, and start putting your demand gen strategy together to go after them. Is it a conference? Is it a webinar? Is it a podcast? Is it business development, to do outbound calling? Is it some type of social media campaign? Those are all things you kind of have to go through.
What you're describing is a funnel
Yeah.
that starts with the ideal client profile. Then you get down to companies and identified companies. By the way, if somebody is identifying a quantity of companies, and maybe this has to do with the resources that they have available, well, what do you generally see as a good amount of companies? Do you want to keep it smaller so it's tight, or do you want to really be broad in terms of the number of target companies?
That's a
I stepped on something with that one.
no. I mean, I've done it both ways.
Yeah.
I'd say if you're doing social media or you've got some type of outbound, campaign resource or business development resource, go as broad as you can.
As you can digest.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you're starting up and you've got 5 resources or 4 people or whatever,
or even 2,
yeah,
I think you've got to
really got to narrow.
You've got to narrow it down,
Yeah.
and it's something that you can actually go after. And I've done it both ways. And also it depends on budget.
Mm-hmm.
So I've worked with a lot of companies that just had limited budgets. When they first started out. So you've really got to be judicious with your expenditures and how you're going to, and targeted. As though it's like the rifle shot versus the shotgun.
Yeah.
Right. So you need, if you have limited resources, do the rifle shots. If you got more resources, do the shotguns. You're going to bag. You're going to find prospects and ultimately, acquire customers either way, but they're just different approaches based on your resources.
If it takes a number of touches to get to a particular client, then you might have to do X number of touches to get there. And if you have 5,000 people you're trying to reach, unless, again, to your point, you're doing social media or something that you can market and scale, but in some cases too, it's probably hand-to-hand combat, so to speak. It's connections and phone calls. So you've got to be smart about the scope of the number of companies that you want to target originally based upon the resources.
Right. And I'd say I bifurcate my approach or my resources. So again, social media can go to the large mass, audience. If I'm going to actually personally go after, or one of my colleagues is personally going to go after, a targeted set of customers, I'm going to probably take it down to 50 companies.
Yeah.
Right. And then we're going to divide and conquer, and we're going to do personal outreaches to those. And hopefully we come from the industry, or the folks that I'm working with have industry knowledge and resources and contacts that we can then go directly to those individuals. Again, we've identified the company. Hopefully we know that persona, or we've identified that persona, and we can personally touch that persona.
So now we're on step 3 of the process, which is now we're down to the who's.
The who.
And this is the persona of and when you say persona, for somebody that didn't know what persona would be, define persona.
Yeah. So if I'm selling a financial system, somebody in the CFO office, right? Might not be the CFO, it might be the controller, it might be a director of accounts receivable. I don't know. It's just somebody that the solution may be applicable to that's going to benefit from it. If I'm in sales, is it the chief customer officer? Is it the chief revenue officer? Is it the head of sales operations? It's who in the sales organization cares about this particular solution. If it's in marketing, again, is it the CMO, or is it the head of market research, or is it the head of social media? Again, who is that persona that the solution that you're representing cares most about this particular solution, or has the problem that solution can help solve.
Okay.
Right. And so I think that's the persona.
And so I think of titles and maybe 3 titles, 4 titles, 2 titles? Is it one person you're trying to reach?
No, I mean, I think it's probably more than one. I mean, do you want to start high? Let's just pick on, if it's a solution that helps the sales organization. Do you want to go after the chief customer officer? You can. The chief customer officer is probably going to say, thank you. Talk to my head of sales operations. Right? Which is great, because then you get referred to the head of sales operations, right? And who might say, hey, I've got somebody on my team who really is looking at that problem. Go talk to them. So I mean, you want to figure out who's in that chain, in that line of command, and try to go after maybe all 3.
Yeah. It's almost like in using some Sandler reference here too, we refer to it as the cast of characters.
Mm-hmm.
These are the people that are on the stage. Not all the people are the lead characters. You've got some side characters and other people.
Yeah.
So, but generally you want to identify who are the people that are likely going to influence this decision to buy your tools and your software or whatever it is you're selling,
Right.
and identify the persona. One of which of the persona is the title of the person. Maybe the pain that they would commonly face.
Absolutely.
What else would you use to help describe the persona to help someone who at the end of the day is going to be selling to those people? What other characteristics do you have in the persona?
I think that one good way to identify the personas is to find out who is attending maybe conferences
Mm-hmm.
that are focused on that particular issue.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's another good way to identify who the right person is. From that, I attend a lot of, conferences related to, again, consumer goods technology for consumer products companies, right? And so who's showing up to that and who's attending the sessions that maybe it's a trade promotion management, maybe it's data and analytics. It's like, maybe it's how to use, AI in the marketing process. Like what titles are attending these sessions? So it's a good way to start identifying.
It is good.
As well. I guess if I had to add one more,
Yeah.
is like do the research on who's doing podcasts and who's speaking for podcasts.
Who's leading the charge in those areas?
Yeah, I mean, people like to talk. So who's being published in the trade magazines? Who's talking about it? Who are references for other companies that are doing similar things than what we're doing? And so glean from that.
Yeah, without a doubt. LinkedIn, of course, is a great resource on that side of things. It tells you a lot for sure. You might think about doing some relationship mapping or some customer mapping as far as looking at an org chart and what are the titles and roles that would flow into that. But that makes sense. Okay. So again, I love this concept of the pyramid. You've got your ideal client profile. Now you're down to targeted companies. Now you're down to the types of people that would care within that company about what you're doing. And I think your fourth area here was demand, and that is how do you create a demand generation strategy? So let's talk about that for a minute. Yeah. What does that look like? Because this is a big one. I've had a lot of bruised knees and elbows over this one. So.
Yeah, I mean, every company is a little different, but I think they can all follow a basic pattern from a demand generation perspective. Again, you've got your ideal client profile. You know who the targets are you're going after. You know who the personas you're going after. How are you going to reach them?
Yeah.
Right. So that's important. Again, from my perspective, when I think about demand generation, it's enablement and education, to the market. So first of all, people have to know you're out there and what pain you're solving and what solution is available to them to help them, grow their business. And so, the different tactics from a demand generation are, and in no particular order, but if we're going to do like a one-to-many, and so we're doing, webinars and podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing white papers. Again, these are all electronic, right? One of the things I like to really think through is how could you be value added? If you just show up and, do a demo on your product and talk about how great it is, it's going to fall flat. Now, it might be a great product, don't get me wrong, but lesser products have won over better products when the team understands the business problem better and communicates the business problem and talks in the language of the customer. Now, personally, I've always found that if you could provide resources to the prospect or the customer you're going after, insights, analysis, reports, ROI white papers, that help them justify the solution, you're going to be seen as a value-added resource to them, and they're more likely to engage you because going back to the persona and how that persona can help you, because you can help them achieve their goals by bringing them tools and resources to help them sell it internally. I think that's really important. And so I think that's part of demand gen, from that perspective. I love. I had a old. He wasn't old, but I had a longtime friend, is what I'll say, who was a Gartner analyst, a very senior Gartner analyst, and he used to say, "Harris, one of the things I always liked about the companies you work for is you guys." And I'm not that tall, guy, so you can't probably tell sitting down, but but he said the companies you were always with, although they were just starting out, they cast a shadow much bigger than you guys actually were because you were value added. And so the reason I bring this up is you want to create, it's almost a surround sound messaging where people are talking about you everywhere. You've got analysts talking about you. So I think that's an important part of demand gen, to get people talking about you. I think that creating the right alliances with other companies is really important, that help extend your footprint and help that other partner look more valuable is really important. So you've got analysts talking about you. You've got other companies talking about you. In the technology space, get systems integrators talking about you, because you want people saying good things about you. Go to the conferences, right? And so these are all demand gen strategies. So I talked about using a partner strategy. Definitely use a social media strategy. Show up at the right events, in your field. I think that's really important, to do as well. And maybe you're just entering North America, but I bet you've got a prospect, not even prospect, I bet you've got a great reference for a client, in another region of the world,
happens.
Right? That you can bring and talk about you. And I think my experience, and I just did a series of roundtables, for one of my clients, where we went to Chicago, Atlanta, New York, and we got a few more planned. And the roundtables are really designed to bring birds of a feather together. So what do I mean by that? People in that persona, that targeted profile, people in that industry, in that role, together to talk about the problem that you're helping solve. And it's not a sales pitch, right? It is a general roundtable where we talk about issues and how to solve them. I always found, and I found, it's repeated over and over again, even on webcasts and webinars, is when you bring a client that has done it, that doesn't mind sharing their story, other clients flock.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a key element of demand
So
gen.
you're using a third-party story, a testimonial from someone else.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, I mean, okay, so that goes to you, to like another thing that, I've learned, through the Sandler process and working closely with you, Mark, is, the money tree. People say money doesn't grow on trees, but guess what? Learning from you is like, it does. It's the reference tree.
Yeah.
Right. And so leveraging the references, leveraging your customers to introduce you to other customers, and then be your testimonial. And that way you don't have to say anything, because people can actually see it in practice, which I think is really important.
What they're trying to do is they're trying to reduce the risk. Because if someone's going to buy something new that isn't like a household name in that industry or in that space, and that's what a new company would be entering into the marketplace, they wouldn't be a household name. The buyer, at the end of the day, psychologically doesn't want to make a mistake. They don't want to fail at that. And therefore, if they see other people that are similar to them that have purchased this software or have purchased this product, that gives social proof to that, to the conviction that it's okay for them to do it. Otherwise, if you're going to be the first person, it's the old story about the pioneers that went across, they had a lot of arrows in their back. You don't want to necessarily be that person sometimes. You don't want to be that adventurous person by which you take all the slings and arrows. And so by having other people reference that product and say it's okay to buy it because it's good, it just reduces the risk of a new buyer in a new market for saying yes to you. So that makes total sense and a
Absolutely.
great way to go at it.
Yeah, for sure. There's we've been talking a lot about process and steps. There's also a softer side of something that when you're entering a new market that I think is really important. Now, the steps we talked about, critical. You got to do them. Yeah. No doubt. But one of the mistakes I've seen a lot of the companies, and this is over 20 years, that I've worked with, whether they were companies I was part of or partners I work with at SAP or companies I'm advising, I've seen do is try to enter the market without knowing the culture. And I think that's a really important thing. And this personal advice, I've made this mistake too, and I'll tell you the story in a minute, but you got to get local resources who understand the companies, understanding their buying process, understanding their habits, understanding the nuances of how to operate in that market. Story I like to tell is, the company that we worked together on, we were going gangbusters in the U.S. and even in Canada, North America, let's call it. I'm not considering Mexico, North America for this particular conversation because that's more Latin America. It's a completely different culture. I was like, hey, we're doing great in the U.S. We're doing great in Canada. Let's go, conquer. Not conquer, a bad word, but let's go open and penetrate the the Latin American marketplace. And so I'd hop on a plane and fly down to Mexico City. I'd fly down to Sao Paulo. I'd have great meetings, and there'd be like 15, 20 meetings, and people were excited about what we're doing. And I'd go back home thinking we're going to get a deal out of this trip, and nothing would happen.
Yeah.
And then I'd do it again, and nothing would happen. And we'd get a partner who we'd get 50 people in a breakfast room, at the Presidente in Polanco in Mexico City, and we'd have lots of companies interested, and nothing would happen. I finally realized, well, I'm this guy from the U.S. flying down with some of my colleagues, and there was nobody on the ground.
Yeah,
I found the right guy on the ground. I hired him, got our first deal. We hired a few more people, got our second deal, hired a few more people, and within a year, we had 5 new companies that we were working with that we were proud to call clients. And in this case, Mexico, then we expanded to the broader Latin American region. I made that mistake. It took me 2 years to figure it out, that you've got to have local resources. Same when you enter the U.S. You've got to have folks that understand the marketplace, can speak the language, can that can interact on a local level with the customers you're dealing with. So I think that's a really, really important thing to put on the table.
And you learned that after only 2 years. I've seen plenty of folks who have had to take a lot longer than 2 years to go learn that lesson to bring in those resources. And sometimes, I'm curious. I don't know if this is relevant on your side, but sometimes it could be a direct resource where it's a direct hire, and sometimes I've seen through
Partners,
reps, partners, distribution, other channel partners as a part of that help bring people in. I've seen that be effective as well.
It works. It depends on what your strategy is. That is definitely a lower cost way to go because you really just have to train and make sure you provide resources from afar. You're only going to get a percentage of their time.
That's right.
Right. And so
mind share is the number one thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so, if you want 100% mind share and you want to go, full bore, then you've got to have your own folks.
But when you do that, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, it is a very good thing. You just you're putting all of your eggs into that one human or 2 humans,
no doubt,
basket, so to speak. So you better hire the right person. And again, sometimes I've made the mistake where we're hiring someone to go run, let's say, Brazil. And that person that we're going to bring in to go run Brazil, we're hiring that person based upon the U.S. lens of what we would see as someone to be valuable in that market.
Right.
But that may not be the right lens to have because they're selling, to your point, into a different culture. So the filters that we use to hire those people can sometimes be skewed towards the U.S., and that's if a U.S. company is selling into, let's say, Brazil, as opposed to a German company selling to the U.S., they would use German criteria to hire someone in the U.S., and that may not be the 100%. Right characteristic.
Yeah. I hate to say it's trial and error, but that's why it's nice to lean on somebody who's been there and done that.
Yeah.
Right. To help you with those decisions.
Yeah.
To help you make those right decisions, because we've all made. I won't say they're bad hires, just the wrong hires. They're good people in different situations, right? So you just got to make sure that, by the way, if you do feel like you made, the wrong hire, then hopefully you react quickly, and course correct.
Yeah.
And
when you do bring those people and make that as a part of your process, obviously you need to be very intentional about the people that you bring in. Make the right decisions on that distribution. So all critical elements in the uncertainty of going into a new market, no matter what. And I'll come back and say, I have seen agencies, alliances, partnerships. Those can be good resources to penetrate into a new market just because it requires less resources. And you do generally leverage someone who is already established in the market.
Yeah,
but again, it's not a one size fits all. You have to evaluate it. That's why people like you exist to help people be able to make those right decisions.
Yeah, and I think you want to hire people that can bring credibility, instant credibility. But you have to be really careful when you hire people, that you think are going to bring instant credibility. And I can say I'm one of those folks. You want to leverage folks in the right way.
Yeah.
Right. Make sure you leverage their strengths and skills. Don't ask them to do something that they shouldn't be doing. Right.
Yeah, would completely agree. And because sometimes even culturally you get different things too, especially doing business in South America. It's been my experience is that just you can have a cultural mismatch on that front as well.
The other thing that I think is people ask is well, what's the short, mid, and long-term approach?
Yeah.
As you're helping launch a company. And I think, again, I tend to, think that, don't spend all of your investment capital on day one.
Yeah.
Right. I think if you're thinking short term, 0 to 6 months as you're launching, I think it's an important thing to do what we talked about up front. Define your ideal client profile, your target list, your demand gen strategy, the personas you're going after. So get that set up front and then start executing on that. And again, if you ask the question, do you have a large prospect list or a narrow prospect list based on that ideal client profile and that target list? Again, you can employ a couple of strategies. Let social media go broad scale, but on a you think you call it hand-to-hand combat. Leverage the resource that you hired or you're bringing on board to go specifically after the customers you want to deal with. So I think and I think what that's going to do is help build your pipeline. Initially. So really 0 to 6 months, try to build a pipeline. I think that's an important thing. And leverage, the resources at headquarters, wherever the headquarters is, whether it's in Europe, Asia, Australia, et cetera. Leverage resources at headquarters to help with your pre-sale support, your demos, et cetera, with the person on the ground helping lead it and guide it. I think that's an important thing. So that way you can be lean but still effective. But then let's hopefully in the 6 to 12 month time frame, you start getting your first customers. When you get that first customer, you have to do whatever you can to ensure that customer is successful. That doesn't mean you forget about your demand gen strategy. That's got to be pushing forward. You got to continue with that. But then you go into customer success and implementation success. You have to guarantee 150%, if there's a certain thing, guarantee that customer is going to be successful. And whatever you can do within your power and the company's power to make that customer successful, you've got to make them successful. Bring in the right implementation resources, the right support resources, the right customer success resources to make them successful. And that champion that helps you sell it in, that persona that you're working closely with, you've got to do whatever you can to make them shine and be successful. You got to have their back 100%. Success is not an option. It is. Yeah. It is something you're guaranteeing because that's going to set the establishment and groundwork for your future success in the company.
It's almost like I have this mental image of a battlefield and somebody's going to take new ground and it's hard to take new ground. That's always the case in a military situation. Once you take the ground, you've got a supply line that comes in and supports so that you can hold it. And that to me is what goes through my mind to your point of once you do get somebody who is willing to bring on a product that's not, let's say, domestic or it's not as widely known in the marketplace because it's a newer product, they cannot fail. And I could see going back to the parent company, again, wherever that is, and saying, hey, look, if we take this, when we take these new accounts, I need 100% of your support in ensuring that it's going to be successful and making sure, in Sandler, we'd call it a good upfront contract.
Yeah.
But it's having a really good upfront contract with your supply lines in terms of service and support to make sure they're 100% successful. Because that account is going to generate, it's going to be the referral tree that's going to generate other opportunities that exist within that marketplace. So you're going to grow and generate new business off of that relationship. It won't be the only thing you do, but it's going to be a key element to it.
Absolutely. I want to pick up on the upfront contract.
Yeah, let's go.
I love the upfront contract, and mea culpa. Um, you know, sometimes you forget things you've learned, and you have to relearn them. And I think the upfront contract is one of the most valuable lessons,
Mm.
most valuable tools that anybody can use in a sales cycle. Because when you're engaging with a client, having clear expectations up front about, what you're going to do and what they're going to do and the process you're going to follow, it is so critical and so valuable. So thank you for bringing that up because I've made the mistake where I forgot to use the upfront contract and didn't go the way I wanted. Not that anybody did anything right or wrong. It's just, the expectations weren't set properly. And the upfront contract is just a beautiful way to make sure that on both sides of the table, the expectations are set and we're all on the same page.
I heard a quote the other day, Harris. I don't think I've shared this with you since we've gotten reconnected because I recently heard it. And the quote was, "Unset expectations are premeditated resentment."
Okay, I like that.
I think that's a great quote. Just because if you don't have good agreements on going into something, especially something that's got some challenges in it, inherent, like a new market that you're going to penetrate, if you don't have good expectations all the way around with the customer, with your suppliers, with your channel partners, with your alliances, whatever it might be, a lot of bad things can come out of that. And so I'm glad you brought up upfront contracts in the above.
Well, you mentioned it. I just picked up on it because I was like, oh, wow. Forgot about that one. It's so important.
Any other key things that you think about with respect to a process or a selling process, Sandler? Anything else inside of there that you think people should know about as they go to implement and roll out and launch into a new market?
I think that it goes back to when you're initially engaging and you're understanding we'll call it the pain, but the ROI that a solution can bring that you're offering a particular client, making sure that that's clearly articulated. Is it a $10 million problem? Is it a $100 million problem? And then for, whatever you're going to charge, your ROI is 100x, 1000x. I think, and maybe that's part of the upfront contract, but establishing the benefit and then tracking and measuring that on a long-term basis is really, really important.
Yeah.
I think that, we'll talk about the pendulum, right? As well as if you're not getting response, it's always, from a client, it's always fair, if you move down the road, has something changed?
Mhm.
So, you would say going negative, from a pendulum perspective, but, what's happened? What's changed in your business that, we're not having discussions anymore?
This would be a situation where someone you've engaged and started a conversation through the sales process, and they've gone dark or ghosted at some
Right.
point, and now we're not back in touch with them. So
Exactly. So I'm just picking it because that's an important thing. Again, open dialogue just to understand.
yeah, another
what's
good
happening.
expectation.
Right.
To be
Expectation.
said. If at some point during our process together, you need to go in another direction and you not need to pursue this relationship with us, we understand. We'd be disappointed. Would you mind making sure that you communicate, keep the lines of communication open with us, tell us these things so we know how to stand and how to best serve you.
I hope, and if anybody's listening to this, I hope they would agree with me. Through my career, I've always tried to be a bridge builder
Mm.
and a value-added resource, whether somebody is a customer today or maybe in the future. All I want to do is make sure that we can add value, right?
Yeah.
I think that's really an important thing, uh, because adding value is what relationships are built on. It's mutual trust, and people in the industry I've chosen my industry. My industry is consumer products and enterprise software. You think it's big? It is, no doubt. Billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars to go through it every year, but it's kind of small.
Yeah.
Right. And the folks in the industry are my friends, and I want to keep them as friends a long time. So I think that's where it goes. Always build bridges, always add value. Make sure that your relationships are long term. And, you you might not be able to help somebody today, or they might not be able to help you today, but I'm betting at some point in the future we can help each other.
Yeah.
And I think maybe, we had talked about this earlier. This is a marathon, right? Life is a marathon. Life's not a series of sprints. I mean, it is a series of sprints, but we're in this for the long term, right? And I'm getting a little, esoterical or
Love it though.
philosophical here,
I love
but
it.
I think that's a really important thing, that we're building bridges and relationships for long term to be able to mutually help each other out and maybe the industry out,
Yeah.
in the process.
There's a line from the book Partnerships where it talks about they go through Goldman Sachs and the creation of Goldman Sachs. And in the book, there's one line that stands out of this book, and it was the principles by which Goldman Sachs were built on. And the quote, and it's quippy, okay? So you got to use a grain of salt. But the principles, one of the principles that Goldman Sachs said is that we will be long-term greedy, not short-term greedy. Take the word greedy and modify it to taste. But the idea is that it's okay to want to earn business, but it's you also have to think about the long term of it. And if we're going to earn business, let's play the long game. It's a marathon. I love that mindset, because it absolutely is. And otherwise, you burn bridges, not build them, and nothing good comes out of that. So you do have to have a long term mindset to this thing, especially when you're going into a new market.
I'm laughing because it's kind of like life, and you and I like to talk about exercising and working out and what we do. And I was never built for speed. Never. There's nothing that's fast about what I do, at least athletically, but I can go long, right? And I think that's an important thing. So it's like life and exercise. You can do the marathons, you can do the Ironmans, and you're training for them, but then you're going to go further.
Yeah, you just got to be patient with it.
Right.
Got to have the right mindset to it. You got to wake up every day and do hard, heavy lifting that ultimately gets you to where you want to be. But that's the nature of the personality of someone who's going to enter into a new market and be successful. And you've painted a wonderful picture. I love the structure of what you've brought up together today, Harris, and fantastic. If you had a final thought that you would lead with or leave with either an executive or maybe even a seller that's going into a new market and they're trying to open up new doors where there have been no doors before, what would be maybe the most important thing that you'd pass on to the person?
I think a couple of things. One, follow a process, right? Get a blueprint that works. Work with somebody who understands the market. Don't wing it.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, if you wing it, you're probably going to fail. Right. But make sure, and the process is kind of what we talked about. Don't assume that what worked in your home market's going to work in the new market.
It's a great lesson.
Right. And adapt. And the only way you're going to find that out is by working closely with, folks on the ground, local resources. Listen to your customers. I mean, the customers and even prospects are going to tell you what works and what doesn't work. Listen to them, adapt. Know you're going to make mistakes. Know you're going to fail. Know the first 2 or 3 companies that you think you may have the opportunity to do business with, and you may get them or you may not. But if you don't get them, don't look at it as a loss. Look at it as an opportunity to learn.
Yeah. Feedback
is a gift. And even in the face of defeat or loss of a particular prospect, maybe lost to a competitor or whatever, ask the person there or the company that you were dealing with, the people that you were dealing with, what could I have done better? What could the solution, have done better? What could I change, for the future? Because just understand and take every lesson and learn from it and build for the future. That's how you're going to succeed. I'll pick up on some examples from previous companies I've led, and our most successful product launches, our most successful customers were ones who were part of customer advisory councils and customer feedback councils, which helped us shape and define where we were going, right? And I think that's an important thing for any company. Embrace your customers, embrace your prospects, learn, right? And then apply those learnings.
And Sandler rule, you have to learn to fail to win.
Yeah.
So as a result of that, you're going to learn from those failures and apply and improve and run that marathon and keep getting better and stronger over a long time.
Absolutely.
And that's how you enter into a new market. So that's a great set of lessons. I'm having flashbacks to my days when I sold equipment that was Dutch built. It was from the Netherlands. And so I did that for many, many, many years, and having flashbacks through all those. And these are great lessons that I wish I would have had back then.
Yeah, well, me too, back in my early days. And I'm still learning them. Listen, you're never too old to learn, right? And I'm still learning. And I think that's kind of what keeps us engaged.
It makes it fun.
It makes it fun.
It's the best. Business is the best game ever.
Yeah. For sure.
Harris, thanks for sharing your knowledge with us today. So appreciate it, and great to catch up with you.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for hosting, and I look forward to more of these in the future.
And if people wanted to get in touch with you, how would they reach out to you?
Yeah, I think the best way to reach out to me is probably on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Harris Fogel, Fogel. You'll find me under TechCPG, TECH, CPG, why TechCPG, the intersection of technology and consumer products. CPG, consumer packaged goods. LinkedIn is the best way.
It is a great tool, and everybody can grab from there. Well, thank you again, Harris. Appreciate your insights.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Good being with you.
You too. So, hey, I hope you've gotten a ton of value out of this episode. By far, it's our purpose to help people make money and have fun and have a good time. We're here to help improve your life, to help you make it easier to go sell or to manage your sales team, and ultimately to go build your own sales engine. Don't miss an episode. The best way to go do that is to make sure that you jump out to buildingyoursalesengine.com/follow, where you can link up to all of our latest episodes. For more information about this episode, go to buildingyoursalesengine.com, where you can download show notes, transcripts, and other information, including handouts and snapshots of this and other episodes. If you'd like to connect with us to talk about how we can help you build your sales engine, and you are either located in the state of Georgia or are referred to us by one of our clients or affiliated by one of our clients, please reach out to us at buildingyoursalesengine.com, where you can click there to book some time with us. We can find out how we can be of help with one another. If you're not in either of those two circumstances, please reach out to Sandler.com, where you can find a Sandler office near you. Be well.